Sudevaya. I think we're going to have a change of plan. Just have a chant a verse from Bhagavad Gita.
Yeah, we are trying it with wireless technique.
Yeah, can I have a Bhagavad Gita? Because this could take some time and it may not work. So there was a plan, and this is plan B. Anyone have a favorite verse? Here's a nice verse. Everyone knows the verse. 9.26 Bhagavad Gita. If you have a handheld device, you can look. And those of you that don't, you have a good memory. Patram pushpam palam toyam yo me bhaktya prayachati tadaham bhaktyuparatam ashnami prayatatmanaha. One more time. Patram pushpam palam toyam yo me bhaktya prayachati tadaham bhaktyu-paritam ashnami prayatatmanaha. If one offers me with love and devotion a leaf, a flower, a fruit, or water, I will accept it. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. For the intelligent person, it is essential to be in Krishna consciousness, engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord in order to achieve a permanent, blissful abode for eternal happiness. The process of achieving such a marvelous result is very easy and can be attempted even by the poorest of the poor without any kind of qualification. The only qualification is this connection. The only qualification in this connection is to be a pure devotee of the Lord. It does not matter what one is or where one is situated. The process is so easy that even a leaf or a little water or fruit can be offered to the Supreme Lord in genuine love, and the Lord will be pleased to accept it. No one, therefore, can be barred from Krishna consciousness because it is so easy and universal. Who is such a fool that he does not want to be Krishna conscious by this simple method and thus attain the highest perfection of eternity, bliss, and knowledge? Krishna wants only loving service and nothing more. Krishna accepts even a little flower from his pure devotee. He does not want any kind of offering from a non-devotee. He is not in need of anything from anyone because he is self-sufficient. And yet, he accepts the offering of his devotee in an exchange of love and affection. To develop Krishna consciousness is the highest perfection of life. Bhakti is mentioned twice in this verse in order to declare more emphatically that bhakti, or devotional service, is the only means to approach Krishna. No other condition, such as becoming a brahmana, a learned scholar, a very rich man, or a great philosopher, can induce Krishna to accept some offering. Look at that. Without the basic principle of bhakti, nothing can induce the Lord to agree to accept anything from anyone. Bhakti is never causal. The process is eternal. It is direct action in service of the absolute whole. Boy, that's a long purport for such a simple verse. There's 3 more paragraphs. Paragraph number 2. Here, Lord Krishna, having established that He is the only enjoyer, the primeval Lord, and the real object of all sacrificial offerings, reveals what types of sacrifices He desires to be offered. If one wishes to engage in devotional service to the Supreme, in order to be purified and reach the goal of life, the transcendental loving service of God, then one should find out what the Lord desires of him. One who loves Krishna will give him whatever he wants, and he avoids offering anything which is undesirable or unasked. Thus, meat, fish, and eggs should not be offered to Krishna. If he desired such things as offerings, he would have said so. Indeed, he clearly requests that a leaf, fruit, flowers, and water be given to him. And he says of this offering, quote, I will accept it. Therefore, we should understand that he will not accept meat, fish, and eggs. And vegetables, grains, fruits, milk, and water are proper foods for human beings and are prescribed by Lord Krishna himself. Whatever else we eat cannot be offered to him, since he will not accept it. Thus, we cannot be acting on the level of loving devotion if we offer other such foods. Paragraph. 2 more. In the 3rd chapter, verse 13, Sri Krishna explains that the only remains of sacrifice, that only the remains of sacrifice are purified and fit for consumption by those who are seeking advancement in life and release from the clutches of the material entanglement. Those who do not make an offering of their food, he says in the same verse, are eating only sin. In other words, their every mouthful is simply deepening their involvement in the complexities of material nature by preparing nice, simple vegetable dishes, offering them before the picture or deity of Lord Krishna, and bowing down and praying for him to accept such humble offering enables one to advance steadily in life, to purify the body, and to create fine brain tissues which will lead to clear thinking. Above all, the offering should be made with an attitude of love. Krishna has no need of food, since he already possesses everything that be, yet he will accept the offering of one who desires to please him in that way. The important element in preparation, in serving, and in offering is to act with love for Krishna. The impersonalist philosophers, I see it's connected, but I'm reading the Bhagavad Gita purport, thanks. Last paragraph. The impersonalist philosophers who wish to maintain that the absolute truth is without senses cannot comprehend this verse of Bhagavad Gita. To them, it is either a metaphor or proof of the mundane character of Krishna, the speaker of the Bhagavad Gita. But, in actuality, Krishna, the Supreme Godhead, has senses, and it is stated that his senses are interchangeable. In other words, one sense can perform the functions of any other. This is what is meant to say, what it means to say that Krishna is absolute. Lacking senses, he could hardly be considered full. In all opulences, in the 7th chapter, Krishna has explained that he impregnates the living entities into material nature. This is done by his looking upon material nature. And so in this instance, Krishna's hearing the devotee's words of love in offering foodstuffs is in italics, wholly identical with his eating and actually tasting. This point should be emphasized, semicolon. Because of his absolute position, his hearing is wholly identical with his eating and tasting. Only the devotee who accepts Krishna as he describes himself without interpretation can understand that the supreme absolute truth can eat food and enjoy it. Now the computer's working, but we're halfway down the football field, so just going to continue with this. But next time we'll know better. I should know better too. This is a nice Bhagavad Gita cover. The Bhaktivedanta Book Trust. Printed in America? Or Europe, or where? Bombay. Ah. Nice cover. See the cover? Huh? Deluxe edition. Very nice. Very nice. Okay. Patram pushpam palam toyam. I'm surprised. I'm used to hearing when in Prabhupada's lectures, he would often speak, even the poorest man, everyone can get a leaf. Who can't get a leaf? Everyone can get some water. You can't live without water. Everyone can get a flower or fruit or something that's in those 4 categories, and you offer it. So it identifies the categories of what is offerable. It also identifies, as Prabhupada points out twice in the verse, that the main feature is the bhakti. It's not the value of the thing. Quiz question. In Bhagavad Gita, there's only one verse that appears twice in Bhagavad Gita. Manmana bhava mad bhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru. Now the last part is different, but it's the last verse of chapter 9, and it's towards the very end of chapter 18. So it's right in the middle and right at the end. And it's twice. So both are significant. That means it's an important verse. Similarly, this verse appears exactly the same Sanskrit in Srimad Bhagavatam. Really? Yeah, really. And it's in relation to one of the poorest people during Krishna's time, was his dear, exalted devotee, Sudama Brahman. You know the story of Sudama Brahman? Sudama Brahman, I'm going to tell the story of Sudama Brahman, come back to the Bhagavad Gita verse, and make the connection. Because one of the ways of saying what the relationship between Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam is that the undergraduate and the graduate, or where the teaching is presented and then how the teachings can be understood in the context of history. Not fiction, but history. The history is found in the Puranas. The Bhagavad Purana is the history in relation to Bhagavan, Krishna, or many of the other features of Bhagavan. So, when Krishna was very young, in his pastimes, he hadn't gone to school until he was almost 11. The many kids anywhere in the world, they'd be really happy to not go to school until they're 11. But when he was going to school, he was really happy. Not because he wanted to go to school, but he wanted to have pastimes with his dear friend Sudama. Now this means Sudama is an eternal associate, or they were as young boys. They were approximately the same age. So when Krishna was living in Dwarka, how old was Krishna when he was living in Dwarka? We know that he was he lived until he was 125. That much we hear from the scriptures. And so when Sudama went to visit him, Krishna was already married. Krishna had children, and Krishna had grandchildren. So Sudama must have been pretty old too. But he's an eternal associate. Sudama is an eternal associate. At the end of the whole story of Sudama, he has no material desire. He has no liberation desire. He just has the desire of pure devotion. And that is, he just wants to remember Krishna in love and be in that relationship of loving friendship, because they were classmates, so that's friendship. It's a Sakya Rasa relationship. At the same time as being a Sakya Rasa relationship, he knows, unlike the devotees in Vrindavan that don't have an understanding of Krishna as God, he has an understanding of Krishna as the Supreme Person, who is his friend. So they had wonderful activities together as children, which Krishna, when Sudama visits him, reminds him, remember the good old days, this and that and the other. He reminds them of the ordeal that they went through in service to Sudama, in service to Sandipani Muni, his teacher. I think I'm just going to tell the Sudama story mostly and get back to Bhagavad Gita. It's a nice story. Who was Sandipani Muni's mother? That's his school teacher. The mother of his school teacher was Purnamasi. And Purnamasi is Yogamaya personified, yes? And Sandipani Muni had at least two children, two prominent ones in Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan. One of them was his dear Brahmin friend, Madhumangal. And Madhumangal had a sister. Her name was Nandimukhi. Nandimukhi and Madhumangal were brother and sister. She is a Brahmini and very involved in Krishna's pastimes. Madhumangal was kind of like funny, and Nandimukhi was very straight, or very sober and very wise, and she would be required from time to time in Krishna's pastimes for being a clear Brahmini. There's some nice pastimes I'm thinking of, but the role that she played. I'll save that for another class. So Sandipani Muni must have been a very special person. Yes? His mother and his two children intimately involved in Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan. Well, who is Sandipani Muni? It's described by Jiva Goswami that when Krishna went to Mathura, he did a few things. He took care of the Kuvalayapita. he took care of Chanura, and his brother took care of Mushtaka, and they had brothers. They took care of the brothers. Took care of means killed. Kamsa. And then Krishna freed Vasudeva and Devaki. Krishna, he's not even 11 years old yet, but at his direction, Ugrasena was reinstalled as the king. Krishna then received his Upanayana, because it's said that a young Kshatriya boy at the age of 11 would receive Upanayana, means his mantra and Diksha, from Gargamuni, the same one that did the name-giving ceremony. So he's like 10 years, 9 months, and mom and dad, Vasudeva and Devaki, are very anxious that he goes to school. So there's a nice description that Krishna selected his teacher, and he was considering a Vaishnava Brahmin would be ideal, but a Vaishnava Brahmin will know that I'm the personality of God, and then how are they going to teach me? Of course, I don't need to be taught anything, but it wouldn't be right if I didn't go to school at all, so I'll go to school. He was contemplating who would be a good teacher. Madhumangal and Nandimukhi's father. And here's a good reason, because at least on the outside, he was devoted to Lord Shiva. It's a puzzle. How's he devoted to Lord Shiva if his mother is Yogamaya personified and his two children are intimate associates of Krishna? And the short answer is, it's a pastime. It's to facilitate Krishna's pastimes. So Krishna went all the way to Avanti, which is quite some distance. He was, in other words, he was a celebrity teacher. And at the same time, the same age, Sudama came from Porbandar. Those of you from India, you know where that is. Porbandar, place where Gandhi grew up and lived. So it's some distance, about a day's journey by foot in Dwarka. From there to the school of Sandipani Muni. So they went to school together, they did things together. And after graduation, Krishna's graduation was in 2 months. Well, actually 64 days. Because there's 64 limbs or Vedangas, and he learned one a day. And he graduated after 64 days. But after graduation, he did some service. He asked his spiritual master, I'd like to give some Guru Dakshin. So his spiritual master by this time understood he's not ordinary. So he wanted him to rescue his son who had been killed. Or at least he had been informed that his son was killed. Because his son had gone to the sea, and one giant demon came and swallowed him. So anyway, many things happened. Skip all of that. We want to get to Krishna went back to Mathura after some time, doesn't say how long Sudama remained at school, but after some time he went back to his home in Porbandar, and he married. And he, Sudama, was very renounced, like really renounced. The commentators say there's 2 different types of renunciation, and he was of the second type. The first type of renunciation is where someone is indifferent. They're neither attracted nor repulsed by affluence. And 2 examples are given is Ambarish Maharaj, enormous opulence but indifferent. And Prahlad Maharaj, he was given a massive kingdom, the kingdom of Hiranyakashipu, indifferent. He wasn't attached, he wasn't repulsed. So that's one kind of renunciation. And then another kind of renunciation is repulsed. The example that's given is Jud Bharat. He's just like, no. And Sudama was like that. That is to say, he wasn't averse, but he had no interest. And so because he had no interest, because he was that type of renunciate, the Supreme Lord, Krishna, allowed him. He didn't force him to accept opulence. He just didn't like it. Just didn't like it. He didn't like it so much, and it's a little odd, he was married, but he didn't have a job. Not only he didn't have a job, but he didn't perform madhukari, because brahmanas are entitled by Vedic culture to request something from the households of people in their place of where they live. But he didn't do that either. So he lived on whatever just came of its own accord. And although he was a celebrated person, not too much came. And because not too much came for his whole life, and we have a picture, he lived for a long time, he was really lean and thin. And his wife was of the same nature as him, very, very detached, with one exception. She didn't like to see her husband so skinny and hungry, because she knew what hunger was, because she was also hungry. It's not like they didn't get hungry, but they weren't attached. They didn't do anything about it. And so, you know the story, she did what wives will sometimes do. She kept reminding her husband what she wanted. And so he finally agreed to go to Krishna, to ask Krishna, because they both knew that he's the husband of the goddess of fortune, Madhava, the husband of the goddess of fortune. And he has enormous wealth. And he maintains the whole Yadu clan by his enormous wealth. He's the personality of Godhead. He has all opulences in full. So, and you're a Brahmana. And not only you're a Brahmana, you're his friend. Who can say that? That they're friends with Madhava, the husband of the goddess of fortune. So he finally agreed, for one reason, because she was insistent. It was not a nagging, it was love. But the real reason for him was, I'll get to see Krishna, and that will be very auspicious. Transcendentally auspicious. But he was humble and he was shy. So you know the story. He said, I can't go see, you don't see a Brahmana or the king or some important person without carrying some gift for them. Like the culture, often in temples, I'm sure it happens here at least to some extent, people bring things and place before the deity in front of the altar, because that's what you do when you come to before an important person. So he said, gather whatever you can in the house, to his wife. There was nothing in the house to gather. So she went to some neighbors, and she managed from the neighbors, they were also not wealthy, for palmfuls of broken rice. And she didn't have a bag, so she used an old cloth, a rag, tied it, and gave that to him and said, here, you can give this to Krishna. So off he went. And the whole story unfolds where Krishna was with him for practically a whole day, and many nice exchanges took place. And he spent the night, because it got night, and Krishna was at his feet, massaging his feet. He was treating, it ranged from friend to worshipping a Brahmana to I'm the Supreme Lord. It was quite flexible there, how Krishna was speaking and interacting. And it didn't bewilder Sudama because he was very learned and very devoted. So it was just fine. Krishna did most of the talking because he was shy. And he didn't want to say why he had come. So the next morning, he's readying himself to go back to his home, and he didn't show Krishna that little bag. But Krishna saw it, and of course Krishna's omniscient. So he asked, and there was silence from the other side. Did you bring something for me? He looked down. It says right in the verse in the Bhagavatam. He looked to the ground. He didn't want to say. So Krishna, what did Krishna do? Well, he could have done anything. One of the things he could have done is, my dear devotee, he's embarrassed, he's feeling shy, so I won't disturb his mind. I'll just let him be in that mood of, quiet and shy. That's what Krishna did. Krishna reached out and grabbed the bag and started right in front of Sudama, taking a whole handful and eating it right in front of Sudama. And Rukmini saw. Then comes this verse. It's just before he grabbed the bag of rice. He said, even whatever you have is very simple. And he spoke the verse as he spoke in Bhagavad Gita. Patram pushpam palam toyam. And that's a practical demonstration that even something so insignificant, Krishna wasn't hungry, Krishna wasn't needing anything, and the quality, what was being offered, was inferior quality. It was offerable, but inferior quality. He was ashamed. There he was in Dwarka, seeing all this opulence. He saw all amazing scene. Made him feel even more shy, more embarrassed. So Krishna wanted him to not feel like that. It's okay. Even the simplest thing. Ashnami. One of the Acharya's comments. Ashnami means eat. It can mean accept, but even more specifically it means to eat. And one doesn't eat a flower. But if you offer a flower to Krishna, he'll eat it. If he offered it with love, he doesn't have to eat it the way that we eat it, as we just heard in this purport. Just by hearing, Krishna can eat. By seeing, Krishna can eat. Because by any sense, any one of the senses, it's interchangeable with the other senses. But the importance is the love and devotion with which something is offered. And so we want to select items that are in the category of what's offerable to Krishna. One place that I was visiting recently, a university, and I'm not going to say where it was, but one of the students attending that university, attending the program, was an incoming freshman, and they grew up in a family of devotees. And so they were very enthusiastic, very happy that there was a club on campus that was run by devotees. Another young girl was also an entering freshman, and she was the president of the club. And they just happened to meet in freshman orientation. I'm telling the story because I asked her, how's it going with your room situation, because that's sometimes challenging for college kids, and your food situation. She said the roommate thing is okay, but I can't find food that doesn't have onion and garlic. So I didn't ask the rest, but if it has onion and garlic, then she's eating something that's not offered to Krishna. And you read the purport, and it's, from chapter 3. You're eating only sin. And she's a devotee. He said, well, your mom must feel bad about this. Maybe she'll send you something in the mail or something. Maybe you can get something from the temple. Or find somebody somewhere, somehow. But where there's a will, there's a way. She said, yeah. But devotees know the difference. And others may not know the difference, and therefore there's complexities in their life just because they don't know what's to be done, what's not to be done. And if you know what's to be done and not to be done, it's quite simple. Anukoyasya sankalpa pratikoyasya varjanam. You accept what's to be done and you say no thank you to what's not to be done. It's quite simple. As long as you know what's to be done, what's not to be done. And then it's not just what, it's how, or the consciousness behind. So we have everything to do with both what and the consciousness behind. More important than the what is the consciousness behind. Now there's some boundaries for what, but it can be something quite simple, and it's the love and devotion with which something is offered. Now many of us, let's take a spectrum of the practicing devotees. In the beginning of the practice of devotion, commonly one is very keen to learn something new. And you learn that something new, and you try with devotion to do that something that's new. Some time passes, however much time passes, and then those things that you do may become mechanical. And if things become mechanical, there's no happiness because it's mechanical. So then what happens to those people that it becomes mechanical and there's no spiritual happiness, or they're not learning something new? Different things can happen. They can become slack. And how long can somebody be slack or complacent or not enthusiastic and continue with regulations that don't have any taste? In part because it's not new. So then the bhakti process requires that we move into another zone than just because it's new, or the 4 reasons that pious people render devotional service. You all know those 4 reasons. So supposing one of those reasons is you're distressed. Now the stress is mitigated. Another is you want wealth, supposing some wealth comes. Supposing you're curious, your curiosity is satisfied. Supposing you gain some knowledge, that's better than the others. But after some time, 1, 2, 3, 4, that's now satisfied. See you later, Krishna. Until the pinch comes on, and then so it's required. But my point here is to go on in devotional service. You have to move to another paradigm. Then it's new, and therefore it's interesting to me. There's a relationship with Krishna. There's an offering of something that's meaningful in my relationship with Krishna. Let me do that. The exercising your bhakti muscle is required. And if you're conscious in exercising the bhakti muscle will get stronger. Supposing you're not exercising the bhakti muscle, it doesn't always happen, but it's not uncommon that the practices will subside, and after some time they may disappear. And where'd that devotee go? Now, there's certainly many devotees stay, and certainly more than many devotees don't stay. So, wouldn't it be nice to be in the category of not only those that stay, but those that achieve the purpose of what bhakti is meant to achieve? That's the nice. But it doesn't happen mechanically. It happens devotionally. So it's important Reading such a simple verse as this with 4 paragraphs, the message that Prabhupada is presenting is very clear. It's really clear. And if you continue, I'm an advocate of reading Prabhupada's books. If you continue reading Prabhupada's books with a newness, it's not just an information newness, but a recharging of your bhakti muscle or your bhakti battery or the purpose of why engaging in the bhakti process, you'll find the nourishment. And you can keep reading and you keep reading and you'll find more and more nourishment. We'll probably, if I were to ask a question, everyone's going to raise their hand. The first time you read Bhagavad Gita, you understood some things, lots of things you didn't clearly understand. You read it again. Many things you didn't understand or didn't pick up on the first time, all of a sudden they became clearer. Oh, that's what that means. Then you read it again and read it again. So if you continue in reading or receiving the transmission from our founder Acharya, the transmission of bhakti knowledge, your bhakti life will grow. So keep reading Prabhupada's books, not because I already know it, but because you know it's going to nourish that which is the most important thing in the human form of life. And that's, an attitude of loving service to Krishna. That's our human mission. And those that are very advanced devotees, I just came across, I'll end with this, I just came across a very nice, I mentioned this the other evening, from Padyavali. What's Padyavali? Padyavali is a collection of sayings, short statements, gathered by Rupa Goswami. Some are his own, some are in our sampradaya, some are outside our sampradaya, but it's devotional writings, little short passages that he has collected, and like you say, his verse book, you say. That's it. So one of those that I came across recently, I like. It's written by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's spiritual master. Remember from our discussion? Ishwara Puri was his spiritual master. So Ishwara Puri writes something very similar to what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wrote in Shikshastaka, Mama Janmani Janmarishware Bhavatad Bhakti Rahitaki Tvaye. He writes that others, because he had received initiation with the surname of Puri. The Puri name or Bharati name and other names, they're names from Shankara Sampradaya Sannyas. So during that time, as Mahaprabhu accepted sannyas from Keshava Bharati, that's one of the names of a Shankara sannyasi. Madhavendra Puri, same surname. That's where he received Diksha. He's not, obviously Madhavendra Puri is not a Mayavadi, but he received sannyas from that line, and thus the name Puri. So, Ishwara Puri said, those that I'm paraphrasing, he didn't write exactly like this. There are persons who wish that I should study Vedanta and meditate on the impersonal Brahman and strive for meditation, strive for liberation in that way. And he writes, let them, those that do this or do yoga or cultivate knowledge and do their austerities, and let them achieve liberation. That's very nice. But as for me, and he goes on describing what he wants. And what he wants is lifetime after lifetime. Just engage in hearing topics of the personality of God. It doesn't use personality of Godhead, but names of Krishna. And just hearing his names and hearing his pastimes and enjoying in that way. lifetime after many, many, many lifetimes, I have no interest. And at the end of the Sudama story, he says the same thing. I just want to be in this loving exchange relationship with Krishna lifetime after lifetime. I want to always remember him in these moods of love. So although he was embarrassed and uncomfortable and all those other things, he understood very clearly that the loving reciprocation that was coming from Krishna to him. And any one of us can have access to the same. Everything depends on our regard for Krishna. The kind of material life means check out. Say no to Krishna. And when you say no to Krishna, there's lots of other options. And when you're trying to, even saying no to Krishna for a long time, and you're trying to say yes to Krishna, it takes some effort. It happens. It can happen in our present lifetime. We can check out. Due to circumstance. Not necessarily, averse, but it's for different causes. So once that happens, it's hard to get back to, strong bhakti. So when you meet people that are in that situation, be kind to them, because bhakti is inside. It just needs to be, just like at the beginning, a little spark, and you fan the little spark and it becomes a flame. And the flame can become more than a flame. It can become a fire or a big blaze. That's Prabhupada's instruction. So when you see somebody, and whatever the situation is, in the past they engaged in devotion, or who knows, whatever it is, they're a very new person, or somewhere that's just been coming to the temple or involved in the community of the Sangha of devotees for some time. They're special souls. And fan the spark. Little Prabhupada story, I'll end. Morning walk in Vrindavan. I'm looking at this nice image here. It's the courtyard in front of the temple in Vrindavan. Down at the far end is the temple. Then this archway that comes just before the temple, and there's Prabhupada's Samadhi over here. So all those things weren't there during Prabhupada's time. It was just a temple. And there was like a pond with a little fountain in the middle of the pond. And it was nicely done. So Prabhupada had gone for the morning walk. He went out that area, out the front gate, turned right, going down, and then turned around and came back. And as he turned around and came back, we were getting closer to the temple. We could hear the kirtan. And Prabhupada looked around, said, "Where are all the devotees?" And somebody boldly said, "They're waiting at the gate, Prabhupada, for you to return from the morning walk." And he said, when he asked where all the devotees, he heard the kirtan also. He said, when there's an opportunity to associate with the spiritual master, one should seek that association. And this way you get vapu. But when you get vapu, you'll also get vani, or instructions. Vapu means physical, vani means instructions. And he said, and when there's vapu, the more important one is the vani. And in the absence of the spiritual master, then it's vani. That association should be taken. And then he went on. And we were stopped in the middle of the street with his cane on the sidewalk, saying, vani means you see a little spark, and he lifted his other hand and went like this. And you fan the spark. And when you fan the spark may become a flame. That is preaching. That is vani. Then he looked around and said, if you become one who becomes very accomplished at fanning the spark, it can become a big blaze. And his eyes got big. So this temple and ISKCON is a fruit of fanning the spark, and in some cases a nice blaze. And then to maintain the blaze, it takes more fanning of the spark and more fuel, more of giving of the same energy, the sound vibration, the glorification of Krishna, and hearing the topics of Krishna, his pastimes and his teachings, and his deity form, and the holy name, and all those things on a regular basis with a newness and a newness and a newness, if it's done with the mood of devotion. The conclusion. It's the consciousness behind everything that's important. It's not the thing. Although we want to offer nice things. This is an opulent temple. Opulent temple room. Nice to offer that to the deity and to the community. But the opulence isn't the essence. It's the devotion with which everything is done. So be upholders of devotion. Develop it yourself. Encourage others who you connect with in the temple and outside the temple with that mode of devotion by fanning the spark. Okay. That's our camera up there on the ceiling, right? Eyeball everybody. So let's see if there's some discussion. Comments or questions, anybody? Yes?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Krishna says in the 18th verse, like, Mam ekam sharanam vraj. So, what is the he mentioning vraj, and here on one point he's saying take his shelter. Is he instructing to vraj people, or what? Can you explain, Maharaj?
You're asking for the 1866, the word vraj. Why does it appear in the verse?
Yeah, like
that's what you're asking.
Yeah, I'm asking.
Mame kam sharanam
vraj. Why he mentioned vraj?
You want to know what's the significance of that word?
Yeah.
I've heard different explanations. One explanation is he's encouraging Braj Bhakti. Because that's what he wants to give. He wants to give that kind. Mam ekam sharanam Braja. That, or, it's not necessarily Braja Bhakti, but although he's on the battlefield of Kurukshetra speaking to Arjuna, that's his home. That's another less often heard explanation. Is there any scholarly devotees in the audience that want to offer another meaning? The question is clear? Any other meaning? Okay. I like the question. I'll spend some time and see if I can find a nice answer. And if I find it, I'll send it to Sri Chaitanya and he'll forward it to you. Okay?
Sure.
Anything else? Okay. Srila Prabhupada. Oh, you have something? Here's the microphone. Look at that.
Yeah, Hare Krishna Maharaj. So Maharaj, you talk about exercising the bhakti muscles. So I'm just wondering, though I know both are important, but I'm just wondering which is more important, doing active service or self-study?
Or
the self-study of scriptures. Jai Shri Shri Radha Kalachan Ji ki Jai.
what was the adjective? What kind of study of the scripture? Systematic, like that? Self-study. Self-study. Well, your self-study should be service also. Everything, your life should be service. And one of the best ways to nourish is Nam Sankirtan. But along with the Nam Sankirtan is Krishna Katha or Hari Katha, or as you're saying, self-study. Here's a teaching of Bhakti Siddhanta. Ready? Of all the limbs of bhakti, the most important is Sankirtan, Nam Sankirtan. And Bhakti Siddhanta writes, Nam Sankirtan is like worshipping Krishna if it's not with Hari Katha or Krishna Katha, then we don't worship Krishna alone, we worship Krishna with Radha. So they go together, like worship of Radha Krishna. Nam Sankirtan and study of the scripture. So you're saying self-study, but study of the scripture, or hearing, whether it's self-study or you're hearing or you're reading or whatever. It's because the Radha is the feminine counterpart of Krishna. The Vedas is the feminine counterpart of Nam. So we do both. But so your question specifically is self-study versus service. So I'm saying both should be, or all of our life should be, service, including the self-study. Because what's the purpose of it? It's to nourish bhakti. It's to give inspiration to go forward in our life, serving Krishna favorably. It gives us guidelines, it gives us inspiration, it brings about purity, so the service is done properly or pleasingly. Okay?
Hey Krishna Maharaj, thank you for giving class today. My question is that sometimes it's easier to exercise, in my experience, the bhakti muscle with other people in a group. So my question is how we can inspire others to exercise the bhakti muscle.
By doing it yourself.
Yes.
By being a carrier of that mood, it's the best way. Purity is the force.
Thank you.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.